The air was thick with excitement. The kind of excitement that only a baby shower could bring. It was a celebration, a gathering of friends and family who had come together to mark the upcoming arrival of a new life. The pastel-colored decorations filled the living room, and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses echoed in the background as my wife, Sarah, mingled with our friends. I stood off to the side, observing, quietly basking in the warmth of the moment that I had always envisioned this moment, celebrating the life we'd created, surrounded by those we loved, eagerly awaiting the birth of our first child. Sarah, with her bright smile and radiant pregnancy glow, was the center of attention. The room buzzed with her infectious energy as her friends laughed and exchanged jokes. Everyone was excited, including me. I wanted to be part of that happiness, but there was something beneath the surface that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Something felt off, even in the midst of the celebration. It started with Sarah's laughter. It was always genuine, but this time, there was an edge to it, something that didn't quite match the moment. As she joked with her friends, the laughter came easily, too easily. I couldn't help but notice the way her eyes flickered nervously as she exchanged whispers with her best friend, Emily. Their conversation was low, almost inaudible, but it seemed secretive. As I scanned the room, my attention was drawn to another moment, Sarah's hand subtly but deliberately slipping her phone into her pocket when she saw me looking in her direction. I brushed it off. After all, she was pregnant. Maybe it was just the hormones. Maybe I was overthinking things. The day continued in a blur, with games, laughter, and presents being opened. It should have been perfect, but the more I watched, the more I began to feel that strange sense of unease growing in the pit of my stomach. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it. The thought nagged at me, and I tried to push it down, but it lingered. Then, it happened. The catalyst. My son, Ryan, he was a teenager, smart and observant, approached me quietly, almost hesitantly. He wasn't the type to draw attention to himself, but there was something urgent in the way he moved toward me. He pulled me aside into the hallway, away from the prying eyes of the party. "Dad, I need to show you something," he said in a whisper, holding his phone tightly in his hand. I raised an eyebrow, concerned by his tone. "What is it, son?" He hesitated, his fingers fumbling nervously with the phone as though he didn't know how to say it. Finally, with a sigh, he handed me the phone, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw what was on the screen. A text message. It was from Sarah. "I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you. It feels like forever since we were together. Don't forget, our special place at 8 p.m. I'll be waiting for you, as always." The message, though not overtly explicit, hit me like a freight train. I felt my pulse race as the room around me seemed to spin. I stared at the phone in my hand, my mind struggling to process the words in front of me. The message was intimate, familiar, and filled with a longing that I had never seen in Sarah's eyes directed at me. My throat tightened as anger, confusion, and disbelief swirled within me. "Dad, I found this on Mom's phone. I didn't want to tell you, but I thought you should know," Ryan said, his voice soft but steady. I was silent for a long moment, struggling to comprehend what I had just seen. Ryan's face showed no sign of accusation, just concern. He had done what any loyal son would do, protect the person who deserved to know the truth. I handed the phone back to Ryan, still reeling from the discovery. I had never suspected anything like this. Sarah and I had always been close, there had never been any signs of infidelity. Sure, she had become distant over the past few months, but I chalked that up to stress from the pregnancy. But this was undeniable. It was right in front of me. My wife, the woman I loved, the mother of my child, had been having an affair. I felt as though the ground had shifted beneath me. The baby shower, the most joyful day of our lives, suddenly became the backdrop to something far darker. My heart pounded in my chest, and my mind raced through 1,000 different questions. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't I noticed? Had I been so blind? Ryan's voice broke through my thoughts. Dad, what are you going to do? I looked at my son, struggling to maintain composure. I don't know, Ryan. I don't know. My hands trembled, and I wiped my face with them, trying to collect my thoughts. I had to keep it together. I had to think clearly. This wasn't just about me, it was about our child. The one thing that remained pure in all of this, but my mind was made up. The discovery had unlocked something inside me, a need for answers, a need for closure. I couldn't let this go. I wouldn't let it destroy me. I made a decision in that moment. I wasn't going to confront Sarah right away. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to gather more proof. If I was going to expose her lies, I had to do it the right way. The dramatic way. The way that would leave no room for denial, no room for excuses, the calm before the storm was over. What followed would change everything. I stood there in the hallway, my mind racing, my heart pounding. Ryan had just handed me the devastating truth, and now, as I tried to keep my composure, the weight of the situation was starting to suffocate me. I couldn't breathe properly. My thoughts were tangled, a chaotic storm of disbelief, confusion, and fury. My hands were shaking. I knew I had to act fast. The baby shower, with all its merriment and laughter, continued in the background, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions storming through me. I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't pretend like everything was normal when my entire world was collapsing before me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Ryan was watching me carefully, his young face full of concern. He didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation, but he could see the shift in me. The calm exterior I'd kept for so long was starting to crack. I need to make a call, I said, my voice hoarse and low. Ryan nodded silently, retreating to the living room, giving me some space. I walked away from the party, trying to keep my steps measured, though the pounding in my chest made it feel like I was walking on quicksand. I found myself in the study, the only room in the house where I could get some solitude. I closed the door behind me, shut the blinds, and sank into the leather chair by the desk. The silence in the room was deafening. All I could think about was Sarah. My wife. The woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted implicitly, had shattered everything in an instant. I pulled out my phone. The text message was still there, haunting me with its words, each one like a stab to my gut. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, but nothing changed. The message was still there. The betrayal still fresh. I knew I couldn't confront her just yet, not without more proof. I couldn't give her the chance to deny it or make excuses. This wasn't just about me, it was about securing my future, securing the future of our child, who would be born into a shattered reality. I needed to dig deeper. I needed to know everything. I had always been tech-savvy. It was a skill I'd honed over the years, mostly out of necessity, but now, it would become my weapon. I knew I had the tools to uncover the truth. If Sarah thought she could hide her affair, she was sorely mistaken. I grabbed my laptop from the desk and powered it on. My fingers moved quickly, their actions almost instinctual. I knew exactly where to start: Sarah's phone. She was so careless, always leaving it around, always distracted. If I could access her messages, would have the evidence I needed. I wasn't a hacker, but I had learned enough over the years to know how to bypass basic security measures. With a few quick keystrokes, I was inside her phone. My heart pounded harder now, the adrenaline rushing through me like a wave. The first thing I did was check the messages. There was more, so much more. The affair hadn't just been a one-time mistake. It had been going on for months, and as I scrolled through the messages, each one cut deeper. They were filled with sweet, intimate words, ones that should have been reserved for me, not some stranger named Alex. Words like, "I miss you, can't wait to be with you, I need you," it all came flooding back, the complete and utter betrayal she had orchestrated behind my back. But it wasn't just the messages that shocked me. It was the sheer volume of them. These weren't fleeting texts sent in passing. No, these were full conversations, the kind that people have when they're hiding something. These were messages filled with anticipation, excitement, and promises to meet in secret. I saw dates, times, locations. Places that Sarah had claimed she was going for errands, but now, with these messages in front of me, I knew she was lying. The more I read, the clearer it became. Sarah had been living a double life. For months, she had juggled her role as the loving wife-to-be, while also sneaking around behind my back, enjoying her affair with Alex. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. They had built a relationship, one that I was clearly not part of. My eyes blurred as I read through the messages. I felt sick to my stomach, the anger rising like a fire in my chest. But I couldn't allow myself to get lost in that anger just yet. I needed to stay calm. I had a plan that I continued to dig, looking for more evidence. I accessed her photos, her location history. Every trace was there, the breadcrumbs leading me closer to the full truth. The messages from Alex weren't the only thing I found. There were photos too, intimate ones that she had sent to him. I clenched my fists as the images burned into my mind. These were the moments I had never been privy to, the moments I had been left out of, the moments I had no idea were happening right under my nose. One message stood out among the rest. It was a photograph, sent just a few days ago, of Sarah lying on a bed, her body angled seductively toward the camera. The text beneath it read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Let's make it unforgettable." It was almost too much to bear. My wife, was sending these things to another man. She was living a life with him, planning to meet him again tonight. The thought of it sent waves of fury through me. But beneath that fury, there was something else. Something colder, more calculated. Betrayal was one thing, but being made a fool of in front of everyone, that was something else entirely. I took screenshots of everything. Every message. Every photo. Every location. I knew this wasn't just about confronting Sarah, it was about making sure she could never deny the truth. This wasn't going to be a quiet conversation. No, this was going to be the grandest, most dramatic exposure of her lies. The way she would never be able to crawl her way out of it. When I had everything I needed, I sat back in the chair, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. I felt hollow, drained. But at the same time, I felt an icy sense of determination. This was the end of our marriage, the end of everything I thought I knew. But I wouldn't let her destroy me. No, this wasn't about revenge, at least, not yet. This was about justice. Justice for the lies, the deceit, and the broken trust. And I was going to make sure Sarah understood exactly what she had done. As the hours passed, the storm inside me continued to rage. My mind, now fully consumed with thoughts of betrayal, formulated a single, obsessive idea: I was going to expose Sarah. Not just to me, but to everyone. I couldn't let her get away with this. No matter how deeply it hurt, this was something I had to do. She needed to understand the gravity of what she had done, and she needed to face the consequences in front of those who trusted her most. The baby shower still echoed in my mind. I could hear the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the sense of community and joy that had filled the air just hours earlier. How quickly everything had changed. How swiftly one text message had unraveled it all. But there was no going back now. The truth was out, and I was going to ensure Sarah couldn't run from it. I sat alone in my study, my phone and laptop in front of me, the evidence spread across the screen. The more I looked at it, the more disgusted I became. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a deliberate betrayal, carefully concealed behind the facade of a happy marriage and the imminent birth of our child. She had manipulated me, lied to my face, all while planning secret meetings and sending intimate messages to another man. There was no way I could let her talk her way out of this. The phone buzzed on the desk, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw that it was Sarah calling. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Not yet. Not until I was ready. I needed more time to think, to plot, to prepare. This wasn't just about confronting her, it was about taking back control of my life. This was about proving to myself that I wouldn't let her destroy me without facing the full weight of her actions. I stared at her name on the phone for a moment, feeling an odd sense of emptiness. I had once seen this name as a source of warmth and comfort, but now it was just a reminder of how much I had been deceived. I turned the phone over and picked up my laptop again. I needed to find a way to expose Sarah in the most public way possible. A confrontation at home wouldn't be enough. I wanted everyone to know the truth, to see her for what she truly was. But I had to be careful. This was delicate. I couldn't risk making a mistake and giving her the opportunity to manipulate her way out of it. That's when the idea came to me. The baby shower. It was perfect. The event was already set up, family and friends were gathered in one place, everyone in good spirits, all looking forward to a joyful day. The contrast between the celebratory atmosphere and the revelation of Sarah's lies would be devastating. There would be no room for excuses, no way for her to hide. She would have nowhere to run. The truth would be out in the open, in front of everyone who mattered. I needed to make sure I had all the evidence in place before I confronted her. If I was going to tear down her walls, I needed to be meticulous. I went through every message again, taking screenshots of the most incriminating ones. The text about the special place, the photos, the meeting arrangements, everything was there. I even had evidence of their plans for later that night. It was too much to ignore. It was undeniable. Once I had everything, I saved it all to a secure file. I couldn't risk losing this. My heart was racing as I thought about what I was going to do. Sarah had no idea what was coming. I needed to be sure the moment I confronted her was the moment she'd have no escape. I wasn't just doing this to hurt her, I was doing it to show her the full consequences of her actions. She had destroyed everything we had built. And I was going to make sure she understood what it felt like to be exposed, to be torn apart in front of those who thought they knew her. There was another part of the plan that I hadn't fully considered. My son, Ryan. He had been the one to uncover the truth and give me the evidence I needed. I didn't want him to be a part of the confrontation itself, but I also couldn't let him think that I was just going to forgive Sarah. He deserved to know what was happening, he deserved to see me take action. As much as I wanted to shield him from the ugliness of it all, I knew this was something he had to witness. It was an important lesson in trust, loyalty, and what it means to stand up for yourself. I decided that Ryan would be there when everything went down. He needed to see that I wasn't weak. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me any longer, and so, I spent the next hour preparing. I sent a text to a few of Sarah's closest friends, telling them that I had something important to discuss with everyone. The text was vague enough to keep them curious but specific enough to suggest that something serious was going to happen. I didn't want them to be caught off guard, but I also didn't want to give them the chance to back out. I needed them there, as witnesses to the unraveling of the lie. Finally, it was time. I took a deep breath and walked out of the study. The moment of reckoning was approaching, and I knew there was no turning back. The party was still in full swing, the sound of laughter and chatter rising from the living room. Sarah was in there somewhere, probably with Emily, joking and laughing like everything was fine. She had no idea that the walls were closing in on her. I walked into the living room, my eyes scanning the room for Sarah. She was standing near the snacks table, surrounded by her friends, laughing at something Emily had said. Her eyes met mine for a split second, and I saw the faintest flicker of recognition, like she knew something wasn't quite right. But it was too late for her to backpedal now. "Sarah," I called out, my voice steady. "Can we talk for a minute?" The room went silent. Her smile faltered, but she quickly masked it with a forced grin. Of course. What's going on? She took a few steps toward me, her movements slow, like she was trying to gauge the situation that I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her, trying to read her face. The guilt was written all over her, but she was doing a good job of pretending. I could tell she was trying to keep it together. But her body language, her slightly stiff posture, the way her hands twitched at her sides, told me everything I needed to know. "Come with me," I said, motioning for her to follow me into the hallway. Her eyes flickered to the group of friends in the living room, but she followed me nonetheless. I closed the door behind us, cutting off any escape. My hands were still shaking, but my voice was firm when I spoke. "Do you want to explain this?" I asked, holding out my phone to her, the screen showing the text message from Alex. The one that had started it all. Her eyes widened. She glanced at the message, then back at me, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. I don't know what this is," she stammered, her voice shaky. But I wasn't buying it. I had all the evidence. It was too late for her to deny it now. "You don't know what this is?" I repeated, my voice calm but full of fury. "You're telling me you don't know what these messages mean? The ones you've been sending to him for months? The ones that have been a part of our lives, behind my back, all this time?" Her face drained of color as the truth began to sink in. She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. Not this time. The night of the baby shower was supposed to be one of joy, a celebration of new life, of hope, and of the future we had planned together. But instead, it became the night everything I thought I knew about my marriage was torn to pieces. It started off like any other party, friends and family gathered, laughter and music filling the air. Sarah was radiant as always, her beauty a sharp contrast to the turmoil I felt deep down. She laughed and joked with her friends, her eyes sparkling as if she was still the woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with my heart, with my life, and with my child. But there was something off. A nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, a sense that something wasn't right. It was subtle at first, just a fleeting glance, a momentary hesitation. Sarah had always been the center of attention at social gatherings, charming everyone she spoke to. But this time, I noticed something different in her behavior. She was laughing a little too loudly, her conversation seemed more forced, and she kept glancing at her phone, as if she was expecting something, waiting for something, or someone. That I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was just the stress of the baby on the way, or perhaps the demands of hosting had worn her out. But the feeling didn't go away. I tried to push it down, to focus on the guests, on the celebration, but it lingered like a shadow. Then, everything changed. It was during a quiet moment when the noise of the party had died down, and everyone had begun to settle into small groups. I had stepped away from the crowd to check on the food and drinks, and that's when I saw him, Ryan, our son, holding up his tablet, his eyes wide in confusion. "Dad," he called to me softly, his voice filled with concern. I walked over, my heart skipping a beat as I saw the worry on his face. He handed me the tablet, and there, in plain view, was a single message on Sarah's social media account. A message that would change everything. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. The baby shower is the perfect cover. I'm counting down the minutes." My blood ran cold. I knew who the message was from before I even had to look. It was Alex. The name was familiar to me, too familiar. I had seen it countless times in Sarah's phone, always in the background, always slipping through the cracks in our life. But I had never questioned it. Not until now. The message was a punch to my gut, a confirmation of everything I had ignored, everything I had tried to dismiss. It wasn't just a fleeting moment, a one-time lapse in judgment. It was an affair. A full-blown affair, one that had been going on right under my nose. And now, as I stared at the screen, I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. The life I had built, the trust one had placed in Sarah, everything we had shared, it was all a lie. I looked at Ryan, his innocent face still looking up at me with confusion, but I couldn't focus on him right now. I needed answers. I needed to confront this. I quickly turned and walked back into the main room of the party, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions I couldn't quite process. Sarah was standing near the doorway, talking to Emily. When she saw me, she smiled, but it was a tight smile, forced, even. It was as if she knew I had found something, or maybe she could just feel the change in the air. The weight of the moment hung between us, palpable and suffocating. I could feel the tension in my body as I approached her, my hand gripping the phone in my pocket as I fought to control my emotions. How could I confront her without losing control? How could I do this in front of all these people, in front of our friends and family? But it didn't matter. I had to do it now. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. Not anymore, Sarah, I said, my voice low but steady. We need to talk. Her eyes widened, and I saw a flicker of panic cross her face, but she quickly masked it with a forced smile. What's wrong? Is everything okay? No, everything is not okay. The words came out before I could stop them. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was not the time for an emotional breakdown. I needed answers. I know about the affair. Sarah's face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she was going to crumble right in front of me. But she quickly recovered, her eyes darting around the room, making sure no one else was listening. What are you talking about? She whispered, her voice shaking ever so slightly that I didn't give her the chance to deny it. I saw the message. The one from Alex. You think I didn't notice the late-night texts? The way you've been acting, how you always have your phone on you. You've been lying to me, Sarah. The room felt like it was spinning, as if everything around us had faded away, leaving just the two of us in this unbearable moment. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite place. Was it relief? Did she feel a sense of liberation knowing I had discovered her secret? I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She took a step forward, reaching out to me. Please, just listen to me. I stepped back, putting distance between us. You had your chance, Sarah. You had months, years, even, to be honest with me. But you chose to lie. You chose to betray me. Her eyes filled with tears, and I could see her fighting to hold it together. But the truth was out now, and there was no going back. I couldn't keep living in this illusion. She had destroyed the trust we had built, and there was no way to fix that. Please, she pleaded again, her voice cracking. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what happened. Her words were empty to me now. How many times had I heard that? I don't know what happened was just an excuse, a way to avoid taking responsibility. She had known exactly what she was doing. And now, it was too late. I don't want to hear your excuses, I said firmly, the anger now bubbling up to the surface. I want the truth. All of it. How long has this been going on? How many times have you lied to me? How many times have you gone behind my back? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. It started a while ago. But I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. But it was too late. The truth was out. The lies had been exposed. And I couldn't unsee what I had seen. The trust, the love, the life we had built, it was all shattered. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. This wasn't the time to lash out. Not now, not in front of everyone. This conversation isn't over, Sarah. But not here. Not like this. I turned away from her, my heart pounding in my chest as I walked out of the room, leaving Sarah behind. I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't look back. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: anger, sadness, disbelief, but most of all, a sense of finality. Everything had changed. And there was no going back. The silence in the room was suffocating, as if time itself had come to a standstill. The once lively atmosphere of the baby shower had evaporated into thick, uncomfortable tension. The air felt charged, heavy with disbelief, shock, and unspoken judgment. I stood there, holding the phone with the damning messages on display, feeling a strange, cold sense of detachment. Part of me wanted to scream, to break down, to show just how deeply I was hurting. But another part of me, the part that had endured so much pain and betrayal over the past few months, was oddly numb. It was as though I had emotionally detached from the situation, as if the man I was before all of this had disappeared, and all that remained was this cold, calculated version of myself. The version of me who had been pushed to the brink. The version who would do anything to expose the truth, to stop Sarah from continuing her charade. I glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of our friends and family. Their reactions were mixed: some looked horrified, some betrayed, others unsure of what to say or do. Emily, Sarah's best friend, was standing near the edge of the group, her eyes wide with shock. She couldn't seem to process the reality of what was happening. And then there was my family, my mother and father, who had raised me to value honesty, loyalty, and integrity. The hurt in their eyes mirrored my own pain, but they didn't look surprised. I could see it in their faces. They had seen the cracks in Sarah long before I had, but what stung the most was seeing Sarah's face. She had collapsed into herself, her body trembling, as though the weight of her actions had finally caught up with her. Her shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself smaller, hoping to disappear, hoping that somehow this could all go away. But there was no hiding. "Not now, I can't believe this," Emily muttered under her breath, her eyes flicking back and forth between Sarah and me. She was still trying to make sense of what had just been revealed. "Sarah, is this true? Tell me this isn't true." Sarah's lips parted, but no words came out. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, the panic creeping into her expression. She wasn't going to defend herself, she couldn't. The evidence was too overwhelming. The lies had been exposed for what they truly were: manipulations, calculated deceptions, and a deep betrayal of trust. My voice broke the silence. "Tell them the truth, Sarah," I said coldly, almost daring her to deny it. "Tell them how long this has been going on. Tell them how you've been living a double life while I've been planning for our baby's future. Tell them how you've been seeing Alex while I've been sitting here, believing in you, trusting you. Go on, tell them." Sarah didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood there, defeated, her hands shaking as she wiped her tears away. I could see the shame radiating from her, but I wasn't going to give her any pity. Not now. Not after everything. I turned back to the room. This isn't just about an affair. This is about everything she's taken from me: the trust, the love, the future we were supposed to build together. All of it was a lie. Some people in the room looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Some stood in stunned silence, unsure of how to react. And then, a few voices broke through the tension. "Oh my God, Sarah, why?" Emily asked, stepping forward now, her face pale. "How could you do this to him? He's always been so good to you." Sarah's eyes darted to Emily, but she didn't answer. She didn't know what to say. There were no words left for her. The woman I had once loved, the woman who had been my wife, the mother of our child, was standing there, broken and exposed, unable to defend herself. The room was thick with emotion, but I couldn't focus on anyone else. My mind kept going back to the betrayal, to the lies Sarah had told, to the way she had so carefully hidden everything from me. But it wasn't just about my anger anymore. It was about the people who had been hurt by her actions, our friends, my family, the ones who had believed in us. They had all been lied to as well, and then I thought about Ryan. My son. He had been in the other room with the other kids, oblivious to what was unfolding in front of him. I hadn't even told him what had happened yet. But I knew I would have to. He deserved to know what kind of person his mother really was. It was the hardest thing I would ever have to do, but I couldn't keep him in the dark. Not when everything was falling apart. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want this to happen. I never meant to hurt you." Her apology fell flat in the air. It wasn't enough. She had had months, maybe even years, to come clean, to be honest, to confess. But she had waited until it was too late, until everything was exposed in the harshest way possible. "You didn't want this to happen?" I repeated, my voice rising now, sharp with bitterness. "You didn't want this to happen, but you went out of your way to make it happen. You chose him over me. You chose to lie, to deceive, to keep secrets. You chose to hurt me. And now, you're sorry? Do you think that's enough?" Sarah's face crumpled, and she took a tentative step toward me. "Please, just listen to me." I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared of losing everything we had, but I thought. "You thought what?" I interrupted, cutting her off. "You thought you could have everything? You thought you could betray me, destroy everything we built, and somehow get away with it? No. That's not how this works, Sarah. You can't just undo the damage you've done." I could feel the anger welling up inside me again, but I forced myself to breathe, to stay in control. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. This wasn't about fixing things. It was about standing up for myself, about making sure that the truth came out. The damage was done, and it was time for the consequences to be faced. That I turned to the group of people who had gathered in the room, their faces a mixture of sadness, disbelief, and disgust. "You all deserve to know the truth," I said, my voice steady. "This isn't just about me. This is about all of you. About trust, about loyalty, and about the lies we've all been living under. You can't trust someone who hides things from you, who manipulates you. And you certainly can't trust someone who's willing to tear apart the very foundation of a family." The room remained silent, everyone still processing the weight of the words I had just spoken. But I didn't care anymore. The truth had been exposed. Sarah's lies had been uncovered. There was no going back. She would have to face the consequences of her actions, just like I had to face the reality of the life I thought I was living. And as I stood there, amidst the fallout, I realized something. I didn't need Sarah to define who I was. I didn't need her lies to shape my identity. What I needed now was to reclaim my life, my sense of self. It was time to move on. Time to let go of the past and take control of my future. As I looked around the room, I saw the people who truly mattered, my family, my friends. And I knew that, in the end, their support was all that would matter. Not Sarah. Not the affair. Just the people who had stood by me, who had never turned their back on me. And with that thought, I made my decision. It was time to leave this chapter behind and move forward. The truth had been exposed. The betrayal had been laid bare. And now, it was time to heal. The days that followed the baby shower were a blur. The confrontation had turned everything upside down, and while I had expected the storm to hit immediately, the reality of it all began to sink in only after the fact. My mind raced with the details of what had happened, the moments when I could have caught on earlier, the times when I should have trusted my instincts. But it was too late to dwell on those things now. The truth had come out, and everything was irrevocably changed. Sarah had left the house shortly after the scene in the living room. She didn't put up a fight, not in any way that mattered. The emotional weight of the situation seemed to drain her completely. She left with nothing more than a few belongings and the shattered remnants of her pride. She didn't look back as she drove away, and I didn't try to stop her. It wasn't that I wanted to see her go, it was more that I had come to accept that what we had was gone. The life we built together, the plans we had for our future, all of it was nothing but a series of broken promises and lies. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I thought I'd be. I was numb to the betrayal, numb to the anger, and numb to the pain. It was as if I had already grieved everything that had been lost, and now, I was just trying to move forward, piece by piece. But then there was Ryan. My son, that I hadn't told him what happened yet. The thought of breaking the news to him, of explaining why his mother wasn't coming home, was almost too much to bear. I knew I had to, but it didn't make it any easier. Every time I looked at his innocent face, his trust in me, I felt like a failure. How was I supposed to protect him from the fallout of Sarah's actions? How was I supposed to shield him from the hurt and confusion that was bound to come? I took a few days to gather my thoughts, to find some semblance of stability before I sat down with him. It wasn't something I wanted to rush, but I couldn't keep avoiding it. Eventually, the time came. Ryan was playing with his toys in the living room when I sat down beside him. He looked up at me with his bright, curious eyes, and for a moment, I thought maybe he hadn't noticed the tension in the house, the absence of his mother. But then he asked, "Dad, where's Mom? Why isn't she here?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. His words were simple, innocent, but they carried the weight of everything I had been avoiding. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Ryan," I began, my voice steady but filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "Mom, she's not coming back. She's gone." "Gone?" Ryan repeated, his face scrunching up in confusion. "Where did she go?" I hesitated, not sure how to explain this in a way that wouldn't completely shatter his understanding of the world. She made some choices, some decisions that hurt a lot of people. And because of that, she can't be here anymore. His brow furrowed as he processed my words. "But I want her here," he said softly, his voice full of concern. "I know, buddy. I know. And I wish things were different. But sometimes, grown-ups make mistakes. And we have to live with the consequences of those mistakes." Ryan didn't seem to fully understand, and that was a blessing. I didn't want him to know the details. I didn't want him to bear the weight of his mother's betrayal. But I could see the sadness in his eyes, the confusion, and I knew he could sense that something was terribly wrong. It was the kind of sadness no child should have to carry, and yet, it was the reality he now had to face. "I'm still here, though, Ryan," I said, my voice firm, yet filled with warmth. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to take care of you. And we're going to be okay." He nodded, his small hands clutching onto his favorite toy as he tried to make sense of it all. I could tell he wanted more answers, but I couldn't give him any more than that. Not yet, at least. I just held him close, letting him feel the safety of my presence, and hoping that somehow, it would be enough to reassure him for the time being. As the days passed, I focused on rebuilding. I focused on being there for Ryan, on finding new routines and ways to move forward. I threw myself into work, into creating a stable environment for us both. I surrounded myself with people who cared about me, people who supported me, and slowly but surely, I began to heal. But even as I moved forward, the shadow of Sarah's betrayal loomed over me. There were moments when I would catch myself thinking about her, about what she had done and how it had shattered everything I thought I knew. There were moments when I would wonder if I could ever forgive her, and the answer was always the same: I didn't know. Maybe, one day, I would be able to, but not now. Not after everything. The guilt I felt for having trusted her, for having built my life around her lies, was something I would carry with me for a long time. But I didn't let it consume me. I couldn't afford to. Ryan needed me, and I couldn't let my own pain get in the way of being the father he deserved. Over time, Sarah faded from my thoughts, a distant memory that I didn't feel the need to revisit. She had made her choice, and it had led her to where she was now, alone, without the family she had once wanted, without the trust of the people who had loved her. The consequences of her actions were hers to bear. I had no more room in my life for her betrayal. As I looked to the future, I knew there was still a long road ahead. Healing wasn't a linear process, and there were days when the weight of everything would press down on me again. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had survived the worst of it. I had exposed the truth, and now, I was free. Free from the lies, free from the manipulation, free to rebuild my life on my terms. I knew that, eventually, I would find love again. But this time, it would be different. This time, I would be stronger. I would never let anyone, no matter how much I loved them, have the power to break me the way Sarah had. I would rebuild with honesty, with trust, and with the lessons I had learned. And as I stood there, looking out at the future ahead, I realized that the worst chapter of my life had come to an end. It was time to turn the page and begin a new story. One where I was in control. One where I could finally be at peace.